it's 5 o'clock.
Sorry.
Okay. It's
Thank
5
you
o'clock.
for staying to our last
Thank you
panel
for not eating dinner.
in front of us.
Yay.
We can only take so much before we eat one of the panelists. My money's on Andrew. He's kind of so nice.
Okay, so hi. Welcome to Age Appropriate. Does tea really mean for teens? This is a panel about figuring out where to put stuff in your collection. So very relevant to librarians who have to deal with, parents' challenges, kids who like to read books. Before we get started, let's just all introduce ourselves. My name is Kelly Quinn Chu. You're probably sick of me by now. I was on the last panel. I'm a children's librarian at Santa Clara City Library.
And you're doing a panel tomorrow, right?
Yeah, and
That's
I'm moderating
terrible.
a panel tomorrow.
So see her again. I'm Angela O'Connor. I work at Santa Clara City Library. I give Kelly a hard time for a living on our podcast, One Panel Later. So hear a lot more of our banter about manga and American comics there.
I'm Andrew Woodrow Butcher. I am not a librarian. I am a bookseller. I work for the Beguiling Books and Art, which is a comic book shop in Toronto. And what I do for them is I head up their library department. So all I do is talk to teacher librarians and public librarians all day, every day about collection development for comics.
That's fantastic. My name is Stephen Torres-Roman. I'm a teen librarian here at San Diego Public Library.
I'm Jenny McCluskey. I'm a collection development librarian for Ingram Library Services.
My name is Ben Neal. I'm the main library manager for the Portsmouth, Virginia library system.
Okay, fantastic. So those of us who work in libraries often face the problem of where do we put this book? And it is particularly difficult when it's a book that's like on the edge or it's a series that you already have but you're not sure where to put it. So in this panel, we're kind of just going to go through a couple of different considerations and questions and hopefully come to an understanding ourselves of where to put books like these particularly difficult books. So our first question is, can we just look at the publisher-provided age ratings? Like, they all put them out there. It should be obvious.
And they're quite terrible sometimes, though.
But yeah,
Yes.
so we just wanted to look at a
Sure.
few of them. So this is Image and DC Comics. They have like everyone, a teen, their teen is 12 and up. They have a T+, a mature. But then
Marvel's completely out of step with everybody else.
So this is actually what inspired this panel, because T for Marvel means 9 and up, which is bananas. And it's confusing because we have stuff in our kids' collection, right?
That's T, which
That
you
says
think is
T.
for teen.
But it's not.
It is not.
It's for 9-year-olds. Just to look at a few more, Viz Media has one. They have an all ages, a T, a T+. They don't have ages on there. They just have suggestions. Whereas like another manga publisher, Yen, has like specific age ranges. So it kind of leaves us in a quagmire of uncertainty. So our question is, how else can you judge age appropriateness of a title?
How do you guys judge age appropriate? Actually, Andrew, you know what? You do this for a living. What do you lie to us about as librarians? Like, what do you like? Ooh, this is teen, but it's for 9-year-olds. I know you're part of the problem, Andrew. Tell me how you do it as a non-librarian.
The most useless answer, but maybe the truest, is you read the books, right?
What? Ain't nobody got no time for that, Andrew.
I don't have time for that.
Bamf has been here all day. She's not reading books. What are you even doing?
So honestly, that's one option available to you. I think that one thing you have to keep in your mind when you start worrying about these particular titles, these troublesome titles too, is you're going to get it wrong for someone. I have an office of people who all do the same job. We all talk to each other every day. We're all on the same page, and we can't agree at all. And you're not going to agree with your library patrons, and you're not going to agree with the rest of your staff. So first of all, let this question go. Let it go. And then I would say the next thing to look at is, like, why are you collecting these books? Like, who? And I mean that in sort of a, are you collecting this particular title because it drives circulation, because it's popular, people are asking for it, because it's an example of something, because it's a classic, because you read a great review of it? And I think that's a starting point for navigating this question. I think, why am I having this at all? I don't know.
Andrew's response was like, read the book and then don't worry about the question.
That's right.
Andrew's the first one getting eaten.
So I want to ask the rest of our panel, have you moved a book to a place that is not the recommended age on the book?
I cheated.
Yes.
I do all
Yeah.
the time.
Ben, tell us about your travails.
In addition to looking at these, those of us who actually select things on Baker and Taylor or Ingram, also look at their recommended age things, and I move like 80% of them because I think they're overly conservative sometimes.
Jenny, is this true? You work for Ingram. Oh my gosh, she put her head.
I'm a librarian. I'm not ultra conservative, so.
But I will say there's no like easy answers. There's no right answers for any of this. And when we were developing this, Kelly and I had a discussion. Like at my library, 80% of graphic novel circulation comes from teen or YA graphic novels, and she mentioned that most of hers came from children's. And you get to the point where if there's like one area where where everyone who goes for graphic novels goes to that subsection, if you can somehow shoehorn that in there, if there's nothing that would obviously exclude it from the section that's high circulating, that's what I tend to do because I want people to use the book.
Yeah, we do talk about this because I find myself, our kids' collection circs so high, and the teen collection circs, but not as much as the kids. So I'm always like, can I move this down? Can I put this in a kids section and then it'll go out more?
I was making the same debate with Squirrel Girl, The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which is awesome, by the way. You should read that book. It's about a squirrel girl. And I think it's great for teens. Like, I don't think it's that the content is risque or anything like that. I just think it's a fun romp, and I think teens would enjoy it. But if I want to move a circulation number and I want to validate a certain part of my collection and show people that I'm doing it, I could move it to the kids area. And I did something radical, which I'm sure nobody at my main library knows about except for Kelly, is that I moved a bunch of my tweeny YA books. We're talking about like Warrior series, things like that. I moved it into my children's collection and I called it transitional. And I left the cataloging alone and we created it as transitional. And it is the highest circling YA collection that I have at my library because I then put it from where it should be to an area where I think they're actually checking it out. Teens are more in-house readers, which is hard for me at my branch. So I moved it to an area that I wasn't supposed to and have been validated with a lot of circulation. And I think it's the same with graphic novels. And I know we're going to talk about some other stuff later, but like these can be easily shelved in children's or teen.
Yeah.
One thing that I sometimes encounter in really, really small library systems that I work with is that they end up gutting their adult graphic collection because teen moves more, there's more money, there's more budget to collect for teen. You can squeeze some things, we're okay with being edgy, we'll squeeze it into teen, and then you end up with the most serious, most scandalous, smallest adult selection. So it can be treacherous waters too, it can be treacherous.
And that kind of brings us to the next question we wanted to address in this panel, which is like, how do you find a balance between where the title belongs and where it will find its readership? Because sometimes that's the label or like the trade review recommendation is not the same as where the people are who want to read it. Have at it, people.
Yeah, everybody's just like, they're like, yes, look, I do it all the time. Lumberjanes, especially, I'm a small branch, so normally I own one copy of every book. Not every book, but like popular books. And I really love Lumberjanes, so I bought 2 copies initially, and then 2 copies of the second one because it was on auto order and I forgot to undo it. So I was like, oh yay, so now I have titles, and I'm gonna move Lumberjanes and more than likely Squirrel Girl into my YA section because of that. So, and it has great readership for it as well.
Yeah, and sometimes like it's just like we said, the collection that circs more. Like I put like Descending Stories up here, which is a great manga that you guys should check out, and it's been a fantastic like historical.
Should they check it out, Kelly?
Yeah, you should check it out from your local library. But it's like this fantastic historical saga, and honestly, it's kind of a title that appeals more to adults. But where did I put it? I put it in teen, because that's where people look for manga.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
How much do you, you guys rely on the major review journals for their opinions?
Almost never.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
I rely on them a lot. Like,
Uh-huh.
if I'm trying to make a decision on something, I will go and I will compare all the trade reviews to see what kind of age rec they gave it, to see if I can get away with what I want to do.
Yeah.
I read Kirkus and I'm like, how angry is Kirkus about this title?
Kirkus is angry.
Were they like, burn this book, it is terrible, or were they like, oh, this is
Oh
great,
my
but
God.
like, I feel like those are the most honest reviews. Or I'll pick up the phone and I'll call Kelly and I'll be like, what do you think of this manga? And she's like, oh my God, that's in your teen area? And I'll be like, sending her photos of inappropriate content and moving the book slowly into adult.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that
Yeah,
happens
and
a lot.
then what do you guys have any like crossover stuff that's in different sections? So for example, we have like the Lumberjanes and Gotham Academy crossover on here. I have Lumberjanes in my kids section, but I have Gotham Academy in YA, and I'm like, where the heck do I put this? Anyone got any advice for me?
Can you move your Gotham Academies to kids?
Do you think I should?
I think they're Harry Potter-ish.
Where do you guys have Gotham Academy? If you have it.
I have it in, so we had this conversation because Ingram was trying to get you to auto order
Yeah.
Lumberjanes Gotham Academy, and she got really angry about it because she's like, I like Lumberjanes. Why is this crossover with Gotham Academy happening? You're making me buy a book. So then I took one for the team and read it. I think it's fine. I think it might be a little bit more violent. Lumberjanes comes off as cartoony violent, and Gotham is a little bit more realistic violence, but not anything more than I think some of the things we have. I mean, I think it's suitable for 3rd and 4th graders. There's nothing terrible. It's a little bit sadder, like somebody's mom has died, and you're like,
darker, yeah.
oh, that's sad. Like, and she's like trying to find her way, and there's super villains, so it does have a slightly scarier effect, but not enough where I think that if it was in children's, I wouldn't complain, and if it was teens, I don't know that that's exactly its audience for Gotham Academy, because I don't think that in teen, like for us teen as 7th graders, I don't know that teens are really being like, yeah, absolutely, Gotham Academy is the business. But I do think that 4th and 5th graders might think it's the business, and then that might transition them to Lumberjanes and vice versa.
Yeah, I also think it depends on, especially with like the children's versus teen discussion, like who is the audience checking out your children's graphic novels? Is it the more, are we talking like 3rd graders or closer to 5th graders? So you know, that could have a huge effect on stuff like Lumberjanes. If it's all like 2nd and 3rd graders,
Yeah, like
when that collection,
your
you
children's
need to put it
collection
in.
is like Owly is in the same spot as Amulet,
Mhm.
right? And you're
Yeah.
like, ooh, is that the same audience? It's like, no, not necessarily. But we put all of those together and we lump them into children's
Yeah.
because there's nothing else that we have.
And I also think like the spatial issues in your library can also have a huge effect. If say your children's department say downstairs, where no one other than families going to story time and maybe a little bit older kids go to, it might be harder to put the, at least for circulation purposes, putting the borderline titles down there. But if they're just 20 yards away from like the teen area, it's a different discussion.
I'm new to San Diego, but the library where I previously worked at, one of the things we kept noticing, of course, was that the adults would come, and it happens here, the adults come into the teen section because they want to read Daredevil, and they want to read Avengers, and they want to read X-Men and all that. So at the library where I previously worked, we did some creative shelving. What we did was we left the children's graphic novels for the most part in the children's section. We took all the teen graphic novels and adult graphic novels, put them together, and then put that section in between the teen and adult area.
I did the same thing. But that's because I'm like a rebel without a cause who was like, I don't care, these are going together. But I left the spine labels alone. Like I left young adult and I left because that's the hard part. So we have a teen librarian who orders graphic novels and an adult librarian that orders graphic novels. And then I have graphic novels in 2 different places but under the same record. So then it's like, oh, this one's in YA and this one is an adult. And the YA one isn't there, so now I want to read the 3rd volume of Justice League, and I have to go upstairs to go read it. And upstairs is like a dark and foreboding place.
So at our library, our teen and kids section are downstairs, and the adult graphic novels are upstairs. And it is like a well-populated section, but sometimes like my heart breaks for the stuff that the kids are never going to find up there, because I know they're not going to walk up the stairs and find it.
No, they're like, not only do you have to walk up the stairs, but you have to walk up the stairs and go to the other side of the building. So it's like, you're not reading third volume of that, are you?
Yeah.
So,
When I started my current job, the adult graphic novels were just tucked at the end of like the fiction section where no one looked. So, and we also have our teen room upstairs. So I basically put the adult graphic novels adjacent to the teen room to sort of get away from like the issues of like more mature teens never being able to find the adult works.
yeah, I actually control most of, I control all of my collection. So I shifted a bunch of stuff and I have it so that now all graphic novels, because I have superhero graphic novels along with nonfiction, pulled out of my collection, and they're right across from the teen room, and as soon as you enter the teen room, you see the manga. So it's careful shifting is an interesting idea. I have a question. How many of you guys have actually pulled the graphic novel section of your collection, say they're shelved in 741, outside of your nonfiction collection?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not every
Please.
library has done that. It's not a thing. So
Please give them their own area.
please, but yeah, we
Yeah.
say that like it's like, oh, everybody should do that, but it's like, we
They
did
don't.
that like 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, it was terrible
I
because
was
nobody.
lucky enough to establish a graphic novel collection where I had worked, so I said, no, we're doing this separate.
Right, and that's not something that libraries do. And I think if you don't pull it out, they get lost in like adult
Mhm.
nonfiction, which is terrible.
Another thing about where we'll find this readership, one of the things, and where do you put it, we had a pretty active teen council. So I put the question to them. I said, are you guys reading this stuff? Which ones are you guys actually reading? And which would you think are going to circle in the teen section versus, no, we're not going to mess with, we don't care about that one.
Yeah, that's what I find, like Sailor Moon is up there. And I think that's like a teen recommended one. I'm like,
It is.
teens aren't reading, like some
No,
teens are reading Sailor Moon,
9-year-olds
but
are
it's
reading
like,
it.
like tweens are reading Sailor Moon. They're not gonna,
And that's the other problem you always have, right? Because if you have avid readers in your library, they're already reading ahead.
right.
You know, I mean, I remember, because I'm old, I remember when there wasn't a YA marketing designation. You know, when I was a kid, you read children's books until then you read adult books. And that was it. And, you know, when you're, I mean, how many people here, right, read Stephen King when they were 13, 14, right? So most of the teens, if they are avid readers of this stuff, they're already reading the mature reader stuff at 13, 14, 15.
I read Stephen King at 7.
So yeah.
Wow,
so
you're so
No, I
hard,
didn't. This is so messed
so
up.
hardcore.
But I actually, and this isn't on the panel, so I'm like going to derail your whole thing
No,
right
that's
here.
fine. Go ahead.
I talk about it like, oh, I have the power to do X, Y, Z because I work in a 2-librarian system, and my boss is like, you handle all of the collection because I don't want to order stuff. And I'm like, yay, more work. What do you guys do, or what's your advice when you don't have the power? Like, I can create a tween section, but your boss doesn't want you to create a tween section for like transitional books. Like,
Right.
how do you
And I can
navigate
also
that?
like beg for books from adult, but I don't necessarily get them. Like I'm like, please, or like Golden Conway up there. I love that series. Go check it out. It's awesome. It's like, I'm like, adult, can you buy this for the graphic novel section? They're not guaranteed to say yes to me.
So what are your guys' suggestions if you don't have the power to move your collection or reshelve your collection? How do you handle that with nice words? Everyone here is too nice. They're like, I don't know, we just do it. No one?
You know, one of the things I used to was run a graphic novel book discussion club, so for teens. So I would introduce them to them and make them aware of them, and get them in their view that way.
Yeah, that's a good, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so planning programming.
Planning programming around it. I think you have to build a case for it.
You can do
Yeah.
displays. I love your transitional idea because I think that provides a nice continuity of service across ages and keeps them coming back, keeps them going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the hard part is like if you're stuck in the mud librarians, no offense if you are one, but you're here, so you're probably not. When I brought up the idea of doing a transitional series, because I needed more room physically in my YA section, I talked about it and people were like, you can't do that. And I was like, yeah, but I think that we can.
But I already did.
And I also, hashtag, I already did it 3 weeks ago. Because I thought it was a good idea, but there was resistance. And I think in the library world, we know that you bring up an idea and someone doesn't want to do it. And that's because that's the way it's always been done. So you kind of have to make a case for doing something different. And just because it's the way it hasn't been done, and even if you lose that battle, like all of my graphic novels for adult are shelved under 741, even though I've pulled out the collection. I would really like them to be shelved as fictional books with an author's last name, and then, I'd like to put all the Spider-Man together. So if you're reading Spider-Man, you don't have to be like,
Right.
But
Yeah.
that's a battle that I lose to my collection services director, who's like, that's not a thing where I'm doing for you.
Well, and the weird thing is, for our library, we have our kids and teens graphic novels shelved by series name, but for the adults, they're not allowed to do that.
That's funny for you, but not for me. It's really terrible.
So I want to talk about what you guys do with titles that are like on the edge in some way. So we have some slides here.
Of violence.
The first one is from Tokyo Ghoul, which we have in our teen section, and then I think you guys probably know Deadpool, which is not in our teen section, but which teens ask for and read.
Read a lot.
Yeah. What about that time you almost gave a 6th grader Deadpool?
I didn't
like a
almost give it
6-year-old.
to him. I said, you can go upstairs and get it.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do with the superheroes? I mean, they're always, changing writers often, or there's slightly more conservative story arc. But then suddenly you have, something like
Intestines.
intestines and blood and gore. Some of our library customers are like, definitely put the darker stuff or the more mature teen in with our adult collection, but others are like all superheroes in the YA section. How do you guys deal with that?
Our stuff is kind of split up. We have superheroes every which way.
Yeah.
Is it the same for manga?
So so some of the stuff up here, I think Jenny, you wanted to talk about monstrous, because where do you guys have it? Do you have it, or I mean, like, would you recommend it for teens or adults? Like, where do you think it should
This
belong?
is such a crossover. I would definitely,
Right?
I mean, I would call it mature teen to adult, like a 16 up kind of thing, which often our customers, they would want to put it in their adult section. Sometimes, like the more urban libraries, the bigger systems, they're willing to, kind of take that chance and say,
Feel more edgy.
Yeah, let's put all that stuff in YA. So it really just depends.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Sorry. If you let things that aren't on the edge, that are superheroes or sort of pop stuff that maybe appeals to teen, be an adult, because that's possibly like the intended readership to begin with, then it won't just be this one because it's got gore and this one because it's really screwed up
Right.
and this one. You will have a more robust section, and it will make more sense, I think. So Tokyo Ghoul, a lot of libraries are like, well, we don't really buy that. Like, we put most of the manga, it all goes straight into teen, because that's where the manga is and that's where the manga readers go, which I agree is totally true. That is where the manga readers go. But if you never put some stuff that might be adult appeal, like what's the Rakugo manga? What's it? Descending Stories.
Descending
right?
Stories.
Yeah. So if you don't put Descending Stories in adult, then adult becomes this catalog of only the goriest things, which is a little like.
Right, which is like, not every adult is like, I came here for
Or
horror and
stuff
that's
nudity.
Just me. I'm here for the horror and the nudity.
Right.
Some people only go
or
there for that.
the stuff that they only hear about on NPR.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, like
There
the
can only be
boring
two.
stuff.
NPR and horror.
And like, we also have some other stuff up, like the top panels from A Bride Story by Kaoru Mori, which we have in teen, but
teen.
totally appeals to adults. It could be an adult.
Right.
And it has like tasteful nudity, but no one has ever challenged this book because it's like artistic and historical.
Well, yeah, and what is it? Hellboy is one of my favorite comics, and it's one of my favorite. I see a lot of teens like that, and it was more popular when the movie came out, but it's rated 14 up. But you have a lot of half-naked mythological figures in it. Now, it's not titillating because it's half snake or half vulture or whatever, but, you sometimes will have people look askew at that. Why is that the teen section?
Well, and then where do you draw the line between nudity versus a sexual situation? Like, for example, in the monstrous, sorry, you already changed the slide.
No. I got you.
That picture there, I mean, it's not a sexual situation. She's being sold on the slave market. She's, covered up somewhat, and, the mark on her chest is a big deal. And obviously she's missing part of her arm, so that's pretty in your face too. But that's like, what do you do with that? Because it's so important to
It's
the
like
story.
plot relevant nudity.
Yeah, plot
It's
relevant
not. Well, I
nudity.
think there's a difference between nudity like that and nudity that's like exploitative,
Right, exactly.
and that's like an okay line to draw.
Sure.
I know Angela has a manga on this slide that she wants to talk about.
So Love Stage didn't get me in trouble, but it could have gotten me in trouble. And this is actually kind of to tie in the other slides together. I bought Love Stage. I was refreshing my manga collection. I hadn't ordered the original batch, so I had like a heavy hand, and I was like, I'm gonna order cool stuff. And BL was something that some of my teens had expressed interest. BL stands for boy love. I learned that. Boys love, and it's about boys that love each other, and it's so cute. And then Love Stage, I read like the first one, and I'm like, oh, they're so cute. Like it's like a thing. And then I didn't read the rest of them because I don't have that much time, Andrew.
Yeah.
And did you just say, oh, have you read Boys Love? Have you read Love Stage? Okay.
But I think that manga story, I don't mean to derail,
No,
but
please.
Manga series do that. They change.
Yes,
and
they
suddenly
do.
are sexy.
And-
Volume 14, you're like, oh, I didn't see this
I
coming.
know. What? Oh, I didn't see that. It's volume 3 for Love Stage. And which is funny because it's the same author and the same artist. Kelly's always a big fan of like, manga doesn't change creators, so like all of a sudden you start volume 1, it's the same guys.
But
and
I
all
think
of a
this
sudden,
is like a genre thing where it's like if you like know the genre, you're like, of course it was going there.
in a sweet, innocent way is what I was expecting for it to go there. Like Lumberjanes has like the cutest like girl-on-girl kiss. They're like at a picnic, and I'm like, oh, that's so cute. This one, a teen was reading it and was like, do you think that this should be in the teen area? And there was a penis, and it was like throbbing, and there was a whole sex scene, and I was like,
And then Angela called me and I laughed at her. I was like, Jesse.
I was sending her pictures being like, I put this in teen.
But it's not just that. Like, I read a review of 10 Count, if anyone's familiar with that manga, in Publishers Weekly of all freaking places, that was like, oh, this is appropriate from teens for the first volume. And I was like, oh my God, no, it's not. Like, you don't know where this is going, but I do, and this should not be in your teen section. So I think that, like, trade reviews get it wrong sometimes, too. And you don't know.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Please tell us more of these horror
The
stories.
So Cute It Hurts from Viz. I know librarians were like really kind of freaking out because volumes 1 through 11 were rated T for teen. And then in volume 12, it's like the love interest finally becomes, sexual and very sexual. So it jumps from teen to mature, like skipping teen plus completely. And from what I've heard from Viz, the rest of them are going to be rated M. So it's like, what do you do with that? Do you move the whole thing?
Yeah. Or what about like one part that pushes it over the edge? Like I just read Shattered Warrior, and I was like, this could be like this is like definitely like a YA adult crossover. And then there's like one scene where there's a nipple, and I'm like, do I have to put this in adult now? Like
It's the one nipple rule, Kelly.
right? And like there's one boob, so like
They didn't teach you that in library school, the one nipple rule. So
I
here,
missed that day.
you missed that day. I didn't. I think, and Kelly and I got into a huge discussion about this on a podcast that has not been released, about the conservative nature of libraries and publishers, and the fact that if there is one nipple, or there is, in a sense, something that you're even mildly concerned about, you don't want to go through the hassle, so you kick it up a notch. Like, that's how adults, we hide controversial books that are maybe in YA, and we say, well, this is more adult content, where we know teens are not going to the adult area to read stuff. Like, the conversation around, 13 Reasons Why is now really like, that's got a lot of suicide and adult themes, and it was fine in teen until it became not fine in teen, and now are we moving it to be conservative and to cover our own butts? Ben's like, yes, that is correct.
One thing that's always sort of amused me, throughout the panels today, we've talked about what a powerful visual medium graphic novels are. We talked about how there's like one page that sort of puts something over. I suspect in a lot of cases, for instance, the 13 Reasons Why thing, I suspect the reason why people are reconsidering that is it's now in a visual medium. And there's plenty of stuff in our, if set scenes and violence, made it so something couldn't be in YA, there wouldn't be a lot left in your YA fiction section.
Yeah, so like, is it different when it's visual? It's like, we're like, oh no, they had sex in this graphic novel
Yeah.
and they showed it, so we can't put it. But then it's like the YA section is like up and down sexy times.
Yeah, and it's so easy for a parent to just like open a page of a graphic novel and see like the wrong their own page in the way that they wouldn't if they just randomly opened the book. They really have to pay attention to what was going on that page.
Yeah. So that brings me to our next question, especially for Jen. Was it So Cute It Hurts?
Yes,
series?
I'm sorry. I totally jumped the gun there.
No, so no, you segued me perfectly into our next question, which is it okay to duplicate books across collections or to split a series? So would you recommend that we like move So Cute the whole series so that's all together?
That is like not my call. I don't, I just personally, I don't go ultra conservative, but if it's jumping from teen to mature, if the manga is calling it mature, it should probably be an adult. But I don't know about splitting the series. They're not going to serve that way.
Yeah.
I would think.
I just think ultimately you have to make a decision one way or another
Yeah.
because staff and patrons are not. I once worked in a library that separated out their fiction to an African American fiction section, and they put James Patterson's Alex Cross novels in there, which was its own issue.
Okay.
But then.
Tell us more of your strange
Yeah.
practices, sir.
Can run a panel
But
on
then
that.
all of a sudden people were upset that they had to go, different places to get like their favorite author.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the same dynamic with this.
Yeah, I feel like, so the new Archie series, which is like the new hotness, I guess, everyone's into Archie again. We get requests for a lot of like original Archie comics in our library, and we have them in the kids section.
Right.
But then the new hot Archie is
Literally, he's hot now.
Like literally,
Like,
yeah,
he's not-
sexy Archie. Is in our YA section, and so I'm like, are these kids even realizing this is the same guy? Like,
And if you've been on every panel I have talked on so far, I always mention Afterlife with Archie, but there is,
Yeah.
yes, oh my gosh, Afterlife with Archie is so good. But you read Afterlife with Archie, which you could make a case for belongs in teen because it's like zombie horror, but nothing too crazy. And then if you go to its sister novel, which is Sabrina the Teenage Witch, that is really dark and very adult. And I wouldn't necessarily give that to a teen, but it's like, they're in the same world.
yeah, right? I'm like, we've got Archie books and kids, we've got Archie books and teens, and they have them upstairs in adult. We have so much Archie.
So
It's really cool.
But there's a difference between splitting up a property like Archie or a superhero and splitting up a continuous series like So Cute It Hurts too.
Yes,
right?
that
Because we have
one's hard.
superheroes for little ones, right? And you wouldn't. There's no question there.
I don't know what I would do with So Cute It Hurts. For me, I would leave it in my teen section, and this is my rationale why. Because the first 12 volumes were kid or teen, and then by volume 13, you have an avid reader who is actually on volume 13, and when that challenge does come, then that's the decision that I would make at that point. I think kids are really good self-censorers, and I think when they get to volume 13 and they see that, they might be, this isn't the book for me anymore, as opposed to they never would have read the first 12 volumes if I had hidden it in adult. But it's a very hard choice to make, and it has to be, I think, with your comfortability level of, I'm going to have to justify my position on this, and at some point I may have to move all of them or half of them or whatever the reason is. Which is hard.
Yeah.
There's no like right
I think
answer.
I would definitely not split a series.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
That is a big
And move it
no.
wholesale one way or the other. And one thing you can do that, if you do have to kick it up, one way you can do that is you can, for a while, you can put shelf talkers in that. Looking for this series, it has been moved to, that kind of thing. If you find that you absolutely have to move it to another area.
I mean, you can go a step further, like with a series that splits like that, and I don't own that series, so I don't have to make that really hard choice.
Same.
Yeah, we're like, yay, good for us.
I've dodged that
So
bullet.
we will put stickers on stuff, a lot of stuff, which is to the chagrin of my technical services department, which is probably why they don't like me. But you can print a mature content or explicit
Right.
content additional label and then just extra tape it onto those ones and say, hey, 1 through 12 is fine, and then that helps you in your justifications when you're like, we did label this.
Yeah.
It is a series that's in
Yeah.
teen, but it does have slightly more explicit content.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
you
when
go
we
back and
merged
say,
the two collections, that's what we did. We had this little, near the bottom corner near the spine, we had this neon green mature reader sticker. You could not miss it. It glowed in the dark.
For when you're reading in the dark.
When you're in the dark.
Or when mom's going through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have done stuff like, if you guys are familiar with Hope Larson's Chiggers, it's like given a lot as a read alike for Smile, but it's definitely has like some swears in it, and I know, woo, and it's definitely like a little bit like edgier than those books. And I don't know about you guys, but in our library, Rain and Telgemeier is read by like 7-year-olds. And so I have done like a shelf talker where I have a bunch of Smile read-alikes, and then I have a few that are for like those more like the tweens, and I put a little label on the shelf talker that's like 10 and up or something for these ones.
And that's, I mean, maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's not a sticker, but it's a shelf talker that says this issue 12 more mature, something like that. I mean, good luck, Jenny. Enjoy that.
Yeah, we're actually almost getting towards
You're doing good.
the end. So how do you deal with a challenged book? Because this is the thing, is like all these decisions that we're making, they're partly for, we want to find the right readers for the book, and we want to make sure books are where they're going to find people who love them and where they're appropriate. But we also are like worried about people coming up to us and worrying about stuff like that. So have you guys had experience dealing with challenges in your library? None? Really?
I was really
Zip.
fortunate.
Wow.
I've had parents complain about it, but when I say, do you want to fill out the form? No.
Yeah. No.
Paperwork.
Not really. No. Well, the Fred said the first step is and I'm always shocked when I hear about a librarian who they don't have make sure you have a policy of dealing with challenges at your library. Some libraries still don't, and it always stuns me when a friend of mine, what do you guys have for a challenge? I'm like, I just fax it over. Just, you know, this is what we do.
Yeah, definitely having a policy. That's not to say, like, my library has a policy, but I got a challenged book, and I was like, a challenged book? Cool. Also, why are you challenging this book? So I've had two.
I accept your challenge.
I've had two, so I'm like doubly excited
I
for
know,
both of
it
you.
makes you feel kind of, you're like,
Okay.
ooh, someone is challenging this book. Like, I get to stand up for books today.
Anarchy
Yeah.
and chaos. But and the thing is, in the moment, you could stand up, but when somebody's to the point of like being upset about it, I actually had two cases, and the first one was neither of them were graphic novels, which is nice. It was a science book that had made it into our collection, and we had a regular who I loved and now actually sits on our library board. He was like, hey, I noticed this book was in your new collection. I flipped through it, and the information is like wrong, and this person is like off their rocker and crazy, and you can't keep this book in your collection. And I was like, what? It's about science. How is it wrong? So what I ended up doing is I filled out the card and attached my library, gave him my library director's card, and my library director took the book and was like, this is a bunch of like theories and science, and I have no idea if any of this stuff is correct because I am a librarian. So she took it to the high school and talked to the science teacher and was like, can you help me figure out if this book is correct for the collection? And the science teacher came back and was like, you should probably get rid of this book. And that's the
Crazy
story of how we
pants.
did. Yeah. And then the library director went backwards and was like, why? How did we let this book get into the collection? And it turns out it was a donation through the foundation. And then that got added to the collection. Everyone's like, ooh, it's a brand new book. And nobody necessarily went and did the research, and it got into the collection. And then my second challenge book, which I cannot remember, it's like about a train.
Oh my God, good story, Angela.
It's
Keep going.
I can never think of his name because it's really long. Schnizznik. Oh gosh, I failed you all. But basically, it's the story of a train who bullies everybody, and it's in our Easy Reader collection. You're so angry. Why are you laughing about this?
Just imagine this train bully for like
It is.
6-year-olds.
It's about a train who's like bullying all the other trains. And the book ends, and he did not learn a lesson. Nothing happened, right? He was like, he's still just a jerk train. And a mom came up and was like, I gave this book to my child, and it has no redeeming qualities or values, and you need to remove this. And I was like, it's about a train? So I took her information, and I took the book back, and I actually read it. It's on standing order. It's by a popular children's author. It probably came through standing order. I read it and I was like, yeah, that sucks that the train didn't learn a lesson, but that like doesn't mean that it's not a valid book for you to have a conversation with your kid about bullying. It's not that it doesn't have any dirty words in it. There's no nudie train. It's just like this train that's like a jerk. Yeah, and I get it.
Don't have nipples.
Trains don't have, well, they have nuts and balls and wheels and
Right,
it's
the
got a whole
dark,
thing.
the
Right?
dark side of learning to read.
So I read the book, and then I talked to my youth services counterpart at the main library, and she was like, that's stupid. It's about a train, and he's a really popular author. We buy his stuff all the time. I'm sorry the train didn't learn a lesson. And I was like, me too. It's not bad. It's nothing terrible. So
It's a valid critique of the book. It's not a reason to pull it out of the collection.
Right, and that's the difference you have to take. Is it a critique of the book, or is it actually in the wrong area? And that's when, to Andrew's credit, you then read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can also go outside to people like me, whoever you work with, to, you know,
Yeah.
if you work with someone like me, or the CBLDF, or someone.
If
you know,
only we should be so
anyone.
lucky.
I know. I'm just
The
gonna
science teacher.
email Andrew and be like,
But serious, I feel those all the time, and I at the end of the day, I'm not the one getting yelled at by someone in the library, so that's easy for me. But you know, why did you say this should go in teen? Well, let me tell you why, and I can tell you why. Because if you haven't read the book, someone has read the book,
Yeah.
probably.
So-
So find that person, and maybe that good from the last panel, the good local comic book shop might
Good.
be a resource.
Yeah.
For you.
So I have not had a book formally challenged, but I have had them questioned, let's say. I did have a mom tell me, oh, I wish drama wasn't in the kids section because like I just don't think my daughter's old enough to read it. And I was like, well, it is. And, you know, with that like kind of like concerned way. I did have not a challenge, but someone came up to me and was like, this book's in your kids graphic novel section and it has an F-bomb in it. And I was like, really? And it actually just got cataloged wrong. And I was like, that's super valid. We'll move that. So sometimes people can bring stuff to your attention that way, that like if you put the book in your collection, like the science book, and no one really like looked at it, or you like just read the reviews and it got cataloged in the wrong place, like yeah, that's legit. Like we should look into that. I had a mom object to Tokyo Ghoul, actually, we were talking about earlier, because we had a graphic novel book club, and it was for teens, but our teens at our library are 7th through 12th grade.
Right.
And that book is like older teen, but so we were reading it because the kids asked for it, and one of the moms wouldn't let her son come. And I was like, well,
That's okay.
that's fine.
I think that's what the thing is about libraries. It's hard for us because we don't police your children, you police your children.
Right.
And that's an old standby. I think we also need to be really educated when we make those statements of, we would hope that you have conversations with your kids about a bully train. Like that book maybe isn't meant to inspire questions about bullies, but maybe it is, and maybe that's a good time for you to talk to your child about that.
All right, or maybe like you realize that your kid's not mature enough for this book, and so you're just like, well, let me help you make this decision. And that's like a decision we want parents making, is helping with that instead of relying on us and then getting mad at us.
And the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund has a lot of great resources and information for you. They're there to help. I mean, you can send them an email and be like, hey, I'm having a problem with this. What's your advice? They are a super awesome nonprofit group that are there to help us make really smart choices when it comes to graphic novels.
Also, you guys can go like buy a book from them and support them on the exhibitor floor. They're out there. Have anyone here actually had to contact them for any reason?
Nobody's had a book
No,
challenge,
thank
Kelly.
you.
In the first
Well, I
place.
don't know. Maybe they're just fans.
We love your defensing. Thank you.
We just think you're doing a great job. That's all.
That's what I thought when I passed their panel. I was like, good job, team. Good job.
I know. Thanks. But it's great that they're there.
Yeah.
And it's an important resource that we have. And I also, like the ALA puts out their list of most challenged books, like drama, and this one, Summer, is on there. And that's also a resource, obviously, that you can use when a book is challenged. And with that,
Whoa, was that the end of the panel?
we're,
Oh my gosh,
we're
this-
almost out of time here. We have a few minutes left for questions, comments, suggestions, and critiques.
I couldn't remember the train name, Kelly. Don't throw me under the bus.
Yeah.
website's really, really awesome and easy to navigate and wonderfully done. Yes, you're welcome. I know you didn't like make it yourself, but you
But
are important to the thing
That
that
was your
makes it.
dispensing public service announcement.
It's awesome.
Have anyone in the audience had a book challenged at their library?
What?
Oh,
Can you
which
tell
one?
us about it?
Tell us
Talk to
about
us.
it.
Tell all.
Oh no. Scandalous.
Yeah.
That's the problem with your booby-related son.
Naked.
Tasteful seashells. Yeah.
Wow.
Seriously, this? But I mean, isn't that kind of what we were talking about earlier about how like it's visual and so suddenly it's like immediate and offensive.
Under review. Seashell review.
Yeah.
I can see that. It does break the one nipple rule. That's why.
I know, you should have known.
There were two. You should have known that book was going to get banned. Kirkus gave it a bad review. Oh.
This is Bear.
She has a clear shirt on.
Yeah.
It's see-through.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, so earlier I talked about how I keep losing the same book over and over. So blue is the warmest color.
Right.
And we have it in, our adult and YA are filed, and we actually have an adult copy and a YA copy, because I tend to collect from 11 through college.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in high, we also are in a very, LGBTQIA conscious community, and it was huge and awesome, and it kept disappearing. We had to buy it every 6 months for like 3 years after that movie came out, and finally we've had it for a while. But that's the kind of thing that a few other items my boss mentioned also. They just get stolen at our branch if people don't want it. They don't bother challenging.
They just take it out.
It's like it's
Well,
the same titles over and over again.
Are you sure that's the reason it was stolen? I'm just saying.
Yeah, we wondered, but seriously, after so many copies were taken, I mean, unless it's getting destroyed at their house,
Right.
it just seems.
Or they just kept it.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good point because yeah, keep an eye for library vigilantes.
Well, yeah, that's hard. Like,
Yeah.
so we had it where, so I have a couple of books about sex, and the coolest thing is I'm an embedded librarian, so I'm in the teen room 2 hours a day when they're out of school, and they love reading the sex books to each other.
Right.
And it's in nonfiction. It's in nonfiction YA. It's a book about sex, and I'm like, I'd rather you know than not know, and that's your choice to pull it off the shelf and read it to your friend. And that book goes missing, but it's not because of parents.
Exactly.
It's because it talks about a lot of stuff that's funny. But we also had a patron who would go to The Advocate that we have as a magazine and would constantly hide the magazine. And it was because he didn't want a magazine of that kind on the shelf where people could see it. We alphabetize them, so it was always the first one. So it's a split, right? How do you figure out which one's which? And my answer is just to keep buying more sex books and copies of The Advocate.
Replace it.
Yeah, I once had a patron or patrons who would like move our evolution books to the fiction section. You know,
That is
That's
a
subtle.
passive aggressive.
you know,
That is awesome. Really terrible way.
So we are sadly out of time.
Yep.
Our contact information is on these screens. Please email us if you want to talk about comics or just like be our friends. Like that's fine too.
Andrew's information isn't on there.
there.
Oh my
Andrew's
God.
not on here.
You
Sorry,
all need to call
Andrew.
Andrew for book recommendations.
Yeah, come up here, get Andrew's info. He's
I'm
apparently
the
the
only
man.
Andrew Woodrow Butcher. You can Google me. I'm the only one that exists.
He's in Canada though.
I'm in
Killed
Canada,
all the
though.
other ones.
Yeah, sweet. And thank
it.
you guys so
Thanks
much.
for
This has
making
been
it.
such a fun
Thanks for
panel.
coming to the educators panel, guys. These are awesome. And if you guys come, this is our second year, so I'm really excited and thankful for all of you guys for coming. You guys coming is like what makes it worthwhile for us to keep holding educators panels. Erwin's in the back, like, we're never doing another one again because of you guys and your one nipple rule. But I think, thank you. We've been on 4 of these today, and you guys have been super wonderful and awesome. Thank you for taking your personal time or your work time or whatever it is, like not eating lunch in front of me and like staying here. You guys are awesome. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, claps for you guys. You guys are awesome.
And come back for the publisher panels tomorrow.
And come back for the publisher panels.